There's a phone conversation that lasted exactly 23 minutes and changed not just Dwayne Johnson's life, but the entire landscape of action movies forever. It happened when The Rock was at his lowest point, facing a choice that would define the next 2 decades of entertainment. The caller had done their homework. They knew about The Rock's financial pressures, his contract disputes, and most importantly, his secret Hollywood dreams that he'd never told anyone. It was March 15, 2001, and Dwayne Johnson was sitting in his cramped apartment in Stamford, Connecticut, staring at bills scattered across his kitchen table. Despite being one of WWE's biggest stars, The Rock was facing a harsh reality that his fans never knew about. He was barely breaking even. The wrestling industry in 2001 was brutal on talent. Even top performers like The Rock were locked into restrictive contracts that gave WWE almost complete control over their careers and earnings. Dwayne was making good money by wrestling standards, but after taxes, travel expenses, medical bills from countless injuries, and supporting his family, there wasn't much left. That night, he just returned from a grueling European tour, 14 shows in 18 days across 8 countries. His body ached from years of taking bumps in the ring, and his mind was exhausted from the constant pressure to entertain crowds while dealing with backstage politics that would make Game of Thrones look like a children's show. The Rock had been wrestling professionally for 5 years, and while he'd achieved incredible success, multiple championship reigns, main event status, and arguably the loudest crowd reactions in the business, he was starting to question his long-term future. Wrestling careers were notoriously short, and at 29, he could already feel his body beginning to protest the punishment he put it through night after night. But there was something else eating at him, something he'd never admitted publicly or even to his closest friends in the locker room. Dwayne Johnson had Hollywood dreams. It started small, watching action movies and thinking he could do better than half the actors on screen. The Rock had natural charisma that translated beyond the wrestling ring. When he cut promos, he wasn't just talking to wrestling fans, he was performing for anyone within the sound of his voice. His timing was impeccable, his delivery was magnetic, and his ability to work a crowd was unlike anything the entertainment industry had seen. But Hollywood felt like an impossible dream. Wrestlers who tried to make the jump to movies were usually laughed out of casting offices. The few who succeeded, like Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone, had very specific looks and personas that seemed unrepeatable. No one was casting 6 feet 5 inches, 260-pound Samoan wrestlers for leading man roles. The phone rang at 11:47 p.m. Dwayne almost didn't answer. Late-night calls in the wrestling business usually meant bad news, an injury, a last-minute booking change, or drama from whatever soap opera was currently playing out behind the scenes. But something made him pick up. "Is this Dwayne Johnson?" The voice was female, professional, with a slight California accent. "Yeah, who's this?" "My name is Miranda Chin, and I'm calling from Creative Artists Agency in Beverly Hills. I represent actors, and I think you might be interested in what I have to say." Dwayne sat up straighter. CAA was one of the most powerful talent agencies in Hollywood, the kind of place that represented A-list actors and negotiated 9-figure deals. He'd heard of them, but they were so far outside his world that they might as well have been calling from Mars. "I think you have the wrong number," Dwayne said. "I'm a wrestler." "I know exactly who you are," Miranda replied. "I've been watching your work for 8 months. I've seen your matches, studied your interviews, and analyzed your crowd reactions. Mr. Johnson, you have something that can't be taught and can't be faked, authentic charisma." Dwayne felt his heart start to race. This couldn't be real. Hollywood agents didn't cold call wrestlers at midnight. "What do you want?" he asked. "I want to offer you a movie role. A leading role in a major studio production with a budget of $60 million. The words hung in the air like a magic spell. Dwayne looked around his modest apartment, at the bills on the table, at the ice packs in his freezer for post-match recovery, at the WWE Championship belt sitting on his dresser that represented years of sacrifice and pain. "What kind of movie?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "It's called The Scorpion King. Universal Pictures wants to build a franchise around a character that requires someone with your physical presence and natural screen charisma. They've seen your work in WWE and they're convinced you're the perfect fit." Dwayne's mind was spinning. He'd heard of The Scorpion King. It was going to be a spin-off from the Mummy franchise, starring the same character he'd played in a small cameo in The Mummy Returns. But that cameo had been tiny, just a few seconds of screen time in ancient warrior makeup. How could that possibly lead to starring in his own movie? "I was barely in The Mummy Returns," Dwayne said. "I had maybe 10 seconds of screen time." Miranda laughed. "Mr. Johnson, those 10 seconds generated more audience reaction than most actors get in entire movies. Test audiences loved you. The studio executives loved you. And most importantly, Stephen Sommers, the director, specifically requested you for the lead role. This was surreal. Dwayne had done the cameo as a favor, almost as a joke. He'd never acted before, had no training, no experience beyond cutting wrestling promos. The idea that this could lead to a starring role seemed impossible. "What's the offer?" he asked. $5.5 million. The number hit Dwayne like a chair shot to the head. $5.5 million was more money than he'd made in his entire wrestling career combined. It was more money than most wrestlers made in their lifetimes. It was life-changing, generational wealth. But there was a catch. There was always a catch. When would filming start? Dwayne asked. June. We'd need about 4 months of your time. Dwayne's stomach dropped. June was right in the middle of WWE's busiest season. SummerSlam, their second biggest event of the year, was in August. There was no way WWE would let their biggest star disappear for 4 months during their most profitable period. I have a contract with WWE, Dwayne said. They own me exclusively. I can't just leave to make a movie. We know about your contract, Miranda said calmly, and we think there might be a way around it. This was where the conversation got interesting and dangerous. Miranda explained that CAA had been quietly negotiating with WWE for weeks. They hadn't approached The Rock directly because they wanted to have a deal structure in place first. The proposal was unprecedented. WWE would loan Dwayne to Universal Pictures for the filming of The Scorpion King, and in return WWE would receive a significant percentage of the film's profits plus promotional considerations that would benefit their brand. It was a win-win scenario in theory. WWE would make money from their talent without having to produce or finance a movie themselves. Universal would get their star. And Dwayne would get his shot at Hollywood. But there was still the matter of his wrestling commitments. WWE won't just let me disappear for 4 months, Dwayne said. I'm in storylines, I have obligations to the fans. What if we told you that Vince McMahon has already given preliminary approval? Dwayne nearly dropped the phone. Vince McMahon, the owner and CEO of WWE, was notoriously protective of his talent. The idea that he would let one of his biggest stars go make a movie, especially during peak season, seemed impossible. You talk to Vince? Our people talk to his people. Mr. Johnson, this isn't just about you making a movie. This is about WWE breaking into mainstream entertainment in a way they never have before. If The Scorpion King is successful, it opens doors for the entire wrestling industry. Dwayne leaned back in his chair, trying to process everything he was hearing. This was bigger than just a movie role. This was a chance to prove that wrestlers could be legitimate actors, that the skills that made someone successful in WWE could translate to mainstream entertainment. But it was also terrifying. What if he failed? What if he embarrassed himself and confirmed every stereotype about wrestlers being unable to act? What if the movie flopped and he became a cautionary tale? I need to think about this, Dwayne said. Of course. But Mr. Johnson, I need to be honest with you. This offer has an expiration date. Universal has other actors they're considering, and if we don't have an answer by Friday, they'll move on to their second choice. Friday. It was Wednesday night. He had less than 36 hours to make the most important decision of his life. After they hung up, Dwayne sat in his apartment for hours, staring at the ceiling. He thought about his father, Rocky Johnson, who had been a successful wrestler but never achieved the mainstream recognition that his talent deserved. He thought about his grandfather, High Chief Peter Maivia, a legendary wrestler whose stories were still told in wrestling locker rooms decades after his death. Both men had been incredibly talented, but their careers had been limited by the constraints of their era. Wrestling was wrestling and that was it. The idea of crossing over into mainstream entertainment was a fantasy. But maybe that was changing. Maybe Dwayne could be the one to prove that wrestlers deserved respect as entertainers, not just as athletes playing characters. He called his father first. Son, it's midnight. Rocky's voice was thick with sleep. Dad, I need to talk to you about something important. Dwayne explained the situation, the call, the offer, the opportunity. His father listened without interrupting, asking only a few clarifying questions. What does your gut tell you? Rocky asked when Dwayne finished. That this could change everything. But also that it could ruin everything. Dwayne, I've been in this business for 30 years. I've seen talented people play it safe their entire careers and end up with nothing but regrets. I've also seen people take big risks and fall flat on their faces. But you know what the difference is between the two? What? The people who took risks at least know they tried. The people who played it safe spend the rest of their lives wondering, what if? Next, Dwayne called the one person whose opinion mattered more than anyone else's, his mother, Ada. Ada Johnson had sacrificed everything for her son's wrestling career. She'd moved across the country multiple times, managed his early bookings, and been his biggest supporter through every setback and triumph. If anyone understood the wrestling business and its limitations, it was her. "Honey, you sound stressed," Ada said immediately. "What's wrong?" Dwayne explained the situation again. His mother listened, and he could hear her processing the implications. "Are you scared?" she asked. "Terrified." "Good. That means it matters to you. Dwayne, you've always been different from other wrestlers. You have something special, a gift for connecting with people that goes beyond wrestling. Maybe it's time to see how far that gift can take you." The next morning, Dwayne called WWE headquarters and asked for a meeting with Vince McMahon. 2 hours later, he was sitting in the chairman's office in Stamford, feeling like he was about to betray his wrestling family. Vince McMahon was a complicated man, part genius, part tyrant, part showman. He'd built WWE from a regional wrestling promotion into a global entertainment empire, but he was notoriously suspicious of anyone or anything that might threaten his control over his talent. "So you want to be a movie star?" Vince said, not looking up from the papers on his desk. "I want to explore an opportunity that could benefit both me and WWE," Dwayne replied carefully. Vince finally looked up, studying Dwayne with the intensity of a chess master planning his next move. "Let me tell you something, Rock. I've had wrestlers come to me before asking to do movies. Usually small, independent films that pay nothing and help nobody. This is different." Vince stood up and walked to the window overlooking the WWE parking lot. "Universal Pictures is offering WWE a partnership that could be worth millions of dollars. Not just from this movie but from future projects. They want to use WWE as a talent pipeline for action movies. You could be the first, but you won't be the last." Dwayne felt a mix of relief and pressure. Relief that Vince was on board, pressure because he was now representing not just himself but the entire wrestling industry. "What's the catch?" Dwayne asked. Vince smiled, the kind of smile that meant he was about to make a deal that benefited him more than anyone else. "You'll take a leave of absence from active wrestling for 6 months. During that time, you'll promote the movie and WWE simultaneously. Every interview you do, every talk show appearance, every premiere, you mention WWE. You make it clear that your success comes from your wrestling background." It was a fair deal, Dwayne realized. Vince was giving him permission to pursue his Hollywood dreams, but he was also ensuring that WWE would benefit from any success that followed. "And if the movie fails?" Dwayne asked. "Then you come back to wrestling with your tail between your legs and we pretend this conversation never happened." That afternoon, Dwayne called Miranda Chin back. "I'll do it," he said simply. "Excellent. I'll have contracts drawn up immediately. Mr. Johnson, you're about to embark on a journey that will change your life in ways you can't imagine." She was right, but even Miranda couldn't have predicted just how dramatically Dwayne Johnson's life was about to change. The Scorpion King was released on April 19, 2002, and it was an immediate success. The movie opened at #1 at the box office, earning over $36 million in its first weekend. More importantly, Dwayne's performance was praised by critics who had expected nothing from a wrestler-turned-actor. But the real transformation happened behind the scenes. During the filming of The Scorpion King, Dwayne discovered that he loved acting almost as much as he loved wrestling. The process of building a character, working with directors and fellow actors, and creating something that would entertain millions of people gave him the same rush he got from performing in front of a live crowd. The 23-minute phone call had done more than just give Dwayne a movie role, it had revealed his true calling. Over the next 2 decades, Dwayne Johnson would become one of the highest-paid actors in Hollywood, starring in blockbuster franchises like Fast Furious, Jumanji, and countless other action films. He would build a business empire worth hundreds of millions of dollars, become one of the most followed people on social media, and establish himself as one of the most bankable stars in entertainment history. But it all started with that phone call on a rainy Tuesday night in March 2001. A call that came when he was at his lowest point, from someone who saw potential that he didn't even know he had. The Rock often talks about the importance of hard work, determination, and seizing opportunities. But what he doesn't often discuss is how that one conversation changed not just his trajectory, but his entire understanding of what was possible. Miranda Chin, the agent who made that fateful call, would later say that she knew within the first 5 minutes of their conversation that Dwayne Johnson was destined for superstardom. Not because of his wrestling accomplishments, but because of his willingness to take an enormous risk on an uncertain future. Most people play it safe, she would say years later. They choose the known quantity over the unknown possibility. Dwayne chose to bet on himself when he had no guarantee of success. That's what separates legends from everyone else. Today, when young wrestlers ask Dwayne for advice about transitioning to Hollywood, he always tells them the same thing. Be prepared for the call that will change your life. It might come when you least expect it, from someone you've never met, with an offer that sounds too good to be true. But if you've done the work and you're ready for the opportunity, don't be afraid to say yes. The 23-minute phone call that changed everything wasn't just about a movie role. It was about a moment when preparation met opportunity, when someone was brave enough to take a massive risk, and when the entertainment industry was forever changed by a wrestler who dared to dream bigger than the ring. Sometimes the most important conversations in our lives happen when we're sitting alone in our apartments, wondering what comes next. Sometimes the call that changes everything comes at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night, from someone who believes in us more than we believe in ourselves. And sometimes all it takes is 23 minutes to rewrite the story of who we thought we were and who we could become. Disclaimer: this story is created for entertainment purposes only and is not based on real events. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental. The content is fictional and intended for humor and storytelling purposes.